Hello, it's Michelle from CNC Designs. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in New Zealand. And today I'm going to show you how to make a lovely card using the World of Good suite, which is on page 24 of the brand new Stampin' Up! Annual Catalog for 2020-21. So I'll show you how to make one of these cards, and it's actually got a spinning world in it, so the world spins around. I have a couple versions here to show you, and I have several different features that I'll be pointing out on how to make the cards. So to do this card, you need the Beautiful World stamp set. We'll be using some of the images from there. We also need the world map dies. That comes, you can get that bundled with the Beautiful World stamp set and save 10%. I'll be using Crumb Cake ink and early Espresso ink. I will also be using clear embossing powder, and the other pieces I'll show you now. So let me just move these out of the way. So what you'll need is a card base. In this case I used early Espresso. This is cut half A4, which is A5, scored in the center at 10.5 centimeters, and that gives you an A6 card base. If you're in another country, just do a standard card base for your country. Most of these pieces will fit in the sizes I have pre-cut for whichever card you're making, or you can adjust them down. So piece of Whisper White for the inside. So again, whatever country you're in, cut it down to size. This is 10 centimeters by about 14 centimeters for the inside. You'll need a piece of crumb cake. This is actually A6 size, which is half a card size. So it's 10.5 by 14.85 roughly centimeters. Don't worry about the exact size because we'll be ripping around the edges, so it will end up being smaller. We're also using some of the designer series paper from the World of Good specialty designer series paper. So I've cut a few pieces. These are actually opposite sides. You can choose any pieces you want from the designer series paper. These are about 9 centimeters. Actually, I think these have started out, yeah, I went bigger. So these are roughly about 10 centimeters because I cut the strips on the 12-inch designer series paper, and then I cut them into thirds. So they're about 1.5 centimeters wide, and then a third of the strip ends up being 10 centimeters or 4 inches. But you can adjust them down size-wise if you want. And then I just cut another little strip. So if you cut one 2 centimeters wide, then you can cut the little edge off and still have the compasses in the middle. So another little strip. You can use whatever size strips you want of your designer series paper for the inside. Then I have a piece of Mossy Meadow. This is 9 centimeters by 2 centimeters, and this is going to be die cut with this die here from the set that matches up. So I'll leave that there for a moment. Then you need a piece of the brand new brass foil. Isn't that gorgeous? This piece is it's about 8 centimeters by 2 centimeters, and this one we're going to emboss with the little piece that comes in the die cutting set. So those look like words, but actually they are coordinates. So they're numbers and degrees, etc. for coordinates that happen to, if you look them up on the map, they happen to coordinate with, I believe, 4 of the offices around the world for Stampin' Up! So it's quite cute and clever. We'll be putting that through to emboss onto the new foil. That's a brand new foil from the new catalog. Then I'm using some of the new in colors. This is, I believe it is, let me get the words right. Misty Moonlight, that's right. It's Misty Moonlight. And these circles, I used the circle die that comes with the world map dies. So that circle die cuts that out perfectly, which ends up being the right size to go behind the actual globe. So 2 of those cut out. You'll see why in a moment. Then I used some scrap of the Misty Moonlight, and I cut, there's a little swirl die that comes with it, so I cut a cute little swirl. I've already pre-cut that out. So got a little swirl cut out in the Misty Moonlight. Piece of thread. So I've just used Whisper White. You don't really see the thread underneath, so you can use any color you want. Just has to be long enough to go either side of the globe. So this piece is far too long, but it's just one I happen to have. Then you want a couple pieces of scrap thick Whisper White cardstock. That's to stamp your sentiment and the base of the globe. And then you want to have a piece of Mossy Meadow, wide enough for you to cut out the 2 parts of the globe, so that's both sides of the globe. They are different, so you want both of them. And what I've done is I've already put some adhesive sheet on the back of a section of my Mossy Meadow. Stampin' Up! Has got adhesive sheets now. It's a new product in the catalog. We used to have them several years ago, and now they've come back. So I've already put it on there. If you haven't used adhesive sheets, it's almost like the double-sided tape, where you peel off one side, stick it down where you want. Then in this case, I will die cut it, and then instead of having to put glue on all the little bits when I glue it down, I simply peel it off, and you'll see me doing that shortly. So those are all the pieces we need to get started with this. So let's get going. So what I'll do first is I'll do a bit of stamping. And where did there we go. So I've got my early espresso. Now I want to stamp the inside of the card as well. I'll just pop these things aside for the moment. So always stamp before you put things down, because paper has 2 sides. So there's an oopsie side and the correct side. So if you do an oopsie, you can turn it over. So for the inside of this one, now when you're stamping, whatever you stamp on the inside, just be aware that when you open that, you'll be able to see through. So if you're going to stamp anything, it needs to be up at the top or lower at the bottom, so it's not seen through that circle there. Okay. And when you do write on your card to give it to somebody, again, keep in mind where you're writing. You might want to write down here. This one doesn't show it as much, but some other cards that have openings, you can see straight through it. So for this, I'm using the Adventure Weights. My ink pad is quite juicy, so sometimes I'll just set it on top, and that's enough to get enough ink on there, but it's quite juicy, my early espresso stamp. So if you have a inky stamp pad, just make sure you just gently set it down and come straight up. If you hold it too long, it might bleed. And see, that one I ended up doing crooked, and it has done a bit of bleeding. So I'm going to turn it over and try it again. Just pick up a little bit of that ink, and we'll just do this side straight down, straight. Okay, I like that one. Still crooked. That's okay. Can't stamp straight on the camera, so that's okay. It kind of gives you a bit of a flare. The other thing I'm going to stamp, since the stamp pad is quite juicy, the next image is for the base holding up the globe. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of fine detail there. This is what's called a distinctive stamp, so it gives you a lot of detail. It looks very realistic. If you were to stamp with the juicy stamp pad, and I'll show you here, I'll ink it up. See how juicy that is? It's very wet. Now, if I stamp with that, it comes out very dark, and you don't see a lot of the detail. So my suggestion for you is to excuse me, Either use a sponge dauber or get an ink spot. So you can purchase the uninked spots, Stampin' spots, and what you can do if you have a ink pad that's very wet is you can just tap it with your uninked spot. It picks up that ink, makes it so it's not quite as juicy, and then when we ink up our stamp, it's not as wet. And now I will do it on this side and show you the difference. So there we go. So that one you can see more of the detail. See if it's going to show you. There you go. You can see much more of the detail because it wasn't as wet and inky. And that one, see there, it's kind of hard really to see much of the detail. So I'm going to die cut that, so that's why I stamped it on the other side. However, if you do have a wet ink pad, you can do embossing straight from there. Normally with embossing, you would use a Versamark to keep it, use that, and then ink up your stamp with Versamark, and then either put the color of the powder you want on it, or you would then, after inking it with the Versamark, ink it with the color ink you want and use clear embossing powder. In this case, I'm going to skip out the Versamark part of it because my ink is quite juicy. I'm just going to set that there, and see that picks up quite a lot of ink. You can see I missed a spot just by setting it on there. So I didn't even give it any pressure. I let the pressure of the block do all the work. And then I'm just simply going to place it here. While it's still wet, I'm going to put some clear embossing powder over the top of it. And there you go. So the clear embossing powder has stuck because the ink was still wet. So now I need to go heat emboss that to make it set. So I will go do that, and I'll show you the... Okay, so you can see, yeah, there you go. You can see how shiny that is. So that was early espresso ink, and then I quickly poured over the clear embossing powder and then heat embossed it so it gets all shiny. It doesn't matter what size cardstock I used to do this, as long as it was big enough for the stamp to fit, because I'll be fussy cutting that out later. So I'll do that off camera so you don't have to watch me fussy cut. Okay, I'll put that one aside. Now we'll look at doing the die cut images. So as I said, this one has the adhesive on it, so I will be die cutting 2 worlds on there. There's a die cut to do the base of the globe, and then I will be, as I mentioned before, die cutting this very interesting, it cuts out a bunch of little slots, which is what I will be weaving some of the suede, what is that, faux suede trim. I'll be weaving that through there. I'll show you how to do that. That's what the Mossy Meadow is there. And then on the new brass foil, I'll be doing the coordinates. There they are. So I'm going to take all those away and die cut them. However, I want to show you how to get the circle in the right place for the card, because it needs to go straight through the card. So when you you can do both at the same time, because the die cutting machine, well, it depends on the one you have, but the Stampin' Up! One is excellent, so you can get through 2 pieces of cardstock in one go. So when you put it on, I have a magnetic plate. I don't have the new magnetic plate. The new machine and the accessories for the new machines in the catalog won't be available straight away. I'm not sure when they will be available, but they should be available before the end of this year. So I've got the old magnetic plate. Put the two pieces together, line up the corners, set it onto your die cutting machine. If you have a magnetic plate, that's great. If you don't, then you will want to use some washi tape. And what I used to cut it out is one of the layering circles. So this is, I think this is the fourth largest, so 1, 2, 3, fourth from the smallest, so it's like the middle size one. What you really need to do is just, this circle is the one that comes with the dies, and that's the other, that's the layering circle. So you just see one that's slightly bigger than it. If you have a punch, you might be able to do that. However, trying to get to the center might be difficult. So put it down, make sure your crumb cake edges and your card edges are lined up, and then just center it there. Now the one thing you need to make sure is it's far enough down that your words won't get in the way. So eyeball your words. If you've already fussy cut your words, that's even better. So you just need to make sure you have it far enough down that the words are not going to get in the way. The other way to do that would just be to take, if you haven't already fussy cut your words, just take the stamp, set it there to see about where your words would end up, and make sure your circle is going to be far enough down so you'll have room to put your words in the top corner. Because if it's up too far, it's not going to spin because your words will be in the way. So you need it down far enough, but you don't want it down too far because you want to decorate the bottom of your card. So pop it there. If you don't have the magnetic plate, this is where you would put a little washi tape to hold it in place. But I have the magnetic plate, so it's being held in place just perfectly there. So I'm going to go away and die cut all these pieces, and then I'll come back and show you how to put the card together. Okay, so I've cut that out and it's gone through both sides, so pop the circle out and you've actually got two perfect little circles. Can be used for another project, so I never throw anything out. Okay, so the base, we can stick the inside in. However, before you do that, you want to grab one of these. I like using that side, so this can be showing the compasses on the front, and just stick that down. You can do double-sided tape. I just use liquid glue, it's quicker for the video. So if it comes out, come on. There we go. Now it's working. Working too good now. Okay, stick that in place at the bottom, and I put it on first because it's actually a bit long, so just line it up at the bottom, and then you can just turn it over, make sure it's nice and stuck down, and then snip off the little overhang piece. So I'll snip that bit off there. Okay. And then I always use a tear and tape to stick things down. You don't need to put it on all sides because it's going to be on the inside. Nobody's going to be trying to pull it off, so I just go down each side and just put the tape down, tear it off, give it a nice smooth, and then I do my tabs. So I pull one side off, my nails aren't as long, tab it there, opposite corner, pull it off, do a tab. So then when I line it up inside, I can line it up, and so that side has no tape on it, so it's not going to stick down. So I could get my corners lined up with a little bit showing from each side. Then the part that I pulled the tape up, I just push down there, hold it in place, and then I can pull it straight up. So that way I don't run the risk of sticking it down crooked, or if I do slightly put it crooked, I can pull it up easier because I've only got a couple points where the tape's been exposed. So as I said before, you need to stamp far enough up so it's not showing through the circle. So there you go. So that's the inside done. Now for the outside, I've already die cut these pieces. So I got the world with the adhesive on the back, the coordinates. I've fussy cut my embossed sentiment on the front, and I've die cut the globe holder. Now with these coordinates, yes, they just kind of look like gibberish unless you look at them closely. There is a right and a direction to them. So you need to look closely at them, and I can see this is upside down. If I turn it this way around, I can just barely see that there's a little S there and there's a little E, and these are numbers with a little degree sign, so that says 33 something or other. So what I do with this, to make sure I put it the right way up, is just a pencil on the back, arrow pointing up. So I know that's the top. So that's the direction to put it down. So when I stick it down, I don't have it upside down. Most people won't even know what it is, so it won't matter, but I'm a bit picky. So that's a tip for you to have the right way up. Okay, so now I actually want to emboss a couple things. So to get this look here, there's different ways you can do it. So my original card, I embossed it and ripped the edges off, which I'll show you, and then I thought it looked too plain, so I sponged a bit after I'd put it together, which you can see it's kind of dark in certain places, and I think I sponged that in the early Espresso. With this one here, I did the trick where you put the ink in the embossing folder and then embossed it, so the ink goes into the grooves and it gives it that kind of look. This is the reverse of that, where I put it through and then I just sponged over the ridges and gave it that kind of a look. So it depends on how you want it to look. The trouble with using the sponge on it is you might end up having dark patches where you don't really want the dark patches. So I will show you this method, and you can do whatever you'd like with your card. So I'm using the Old World Die 3D embossing folder. It's a brand new folder, again with the World of Good suite. So here it is there. So depending on which side you want the color on is where you put your ink. Now I'm going to put it on this side, that's the raised parts that's going to press in. So you get different effects, and you can try it both ways. So I'm doing this with the same color as the paper, Crumb Cake. So you just take your ink pad, this is an old ink pad, and you can press on it, but I find the swiping method works quite well. Now I don't need it all the way to the edges because the card's not going to fit that way, all the way to the edge. And so just swipe it on there. You can see there's some color showing up, and you can go different ways depending on how much ink you want. Nice thing with this is it's water-based ink, so once we're done we can just simply rinse our embossing folder and it will come out. Now you see that little circle that came with the die, the emboss circle there? Don't worry about that, because once you emboss this you're not going to see it. It's going to have too much other stuff going on. Or you can use the reverse side. So just place it where you want it on the embossing folder over where the ink is, and then close the folder. When you do your embossing, doesn't matter which direction you put it through. Ooh, got a lot of brightness there. Let me adjust. Okay, sorry about that. Sun is playing tricks on me. So it doesn't matter which direction this way you put it through, but you do need to make sure it goes through your machine with the folded edge first. If you do it with the open edge, it might shift and damage your embossing folder. So it has to have the folded edge going through first. So that's going to be embossed to give us that effect. The other thing I'm going to emboss are the worlds, the globe, because it looks good that way, but it looks a bit too smooth for me. So for that one, I'm using the subtle 3D embossing folder. And so for that one, I want the lines to go up and down. So when I put it in there, I just need to make sure that I've got the worlds going up and down. Okay, so I don't want them sideways, I want the lines to go up and down, so having the world going that way. So I'm going to go emboss these guys, and I'll be right back. Okay, so as you can see now, hopefully, let's see, it's going to focus on that. Okay, so hopefully you can see that there's some texture on the world there, which is a lot different than just the smooth. So it just makes the worlds look a bit better in my opinion. And so went through with the embossing folder, and this is the side that I had no ink, and the side that I had the ink on has pressed the ink into the grooves. So if you like that look. If you don't like that look, then what you can do, and this can just, folder can just be rinsed off, is you can just take your ink and a sponge dauber, and you can simply rub on the side with the raised parts, and you're starting to get some color. Let me just do a bit. So you can just so you can see that there's some color showing up on those raised parts, but I like that look, so that's the side I'm going to go with, just to show you how to get some color onto your cardstock using the folders. So for this, we now want to rip it to make it look even older. So if you rip towards you, you end up with the fibers looking very ragged. But the other side, it doesn't look as ragged, so just decide which way you want to do your tearing. So just holding it tight, and it doesn't matter, you know, make it as whatever way you want, as big of rips, small rips, curves, etc. And that's why this cardstock started out the same size as the front of our card, because I knew I was going to rip it down to size. So just rip around. There you go. You can have big areas, small areas. If you like it, just leave it unripped. If you don't like tearing it, or you know, you have difficulty with that, another thing you can do is take your snips and just run across the edge. So if you run across the edge, you get a ragged look there too. Okay, so you can do that as well. I just do the ripping, tearing, and I love using tear and tape, so I got lots of practice with tearing. So if you can grab it and try to do it in a big section. Nice thing is with the hole in the center, you can use that. You do want to do your embossing after you've cut the center circle, because if you emboss it afterwards, you will, if you emboss it and then cut the circle out of the center, you actually flatten your embossing, which I know from my first try. But you can fix that by just embossing it again. Okay, so there, that's the front of our card, ready to go. All right, so now we need to put our world together. And for that, we need our blue circles. Now you might be wondering, why have I got two? Because I could just stick it on front and back. You will see in a minute why I have two. If you don't have the adhesive to do on the back of that, it's quite fiddly to put the glue everywhere you need. I will show you another trick with the swirl, which I'm going to put on the inside, and I forgot to do that. So to get adhesive on really thin pieces, you can either use a fine tip glue pen, or you can do this little trick here. You could try to stick the adhesive on those little sections, but it gets quite difficult. So what you can do, let's just adjust that light. All right, I think I got the sun at bay now. Sorry about that. Okay, so what you can do, if you don't have the adhesive sheets on the back, or if you put it together and forget all about doing the adhesive sheets, get some glue, pop it on to, this is our silicone mat. So just pop a little bit of glue, depending on how big your project is. Pardon my reach. And then just a wedge of our sponges. So these are sponges that we sell. Get the glue on the sponge, and then just sponge it onto the back of your cardstock. So that way you can get the glue on the back without getting it all over the front, because the Tombow does get quite sticky if you have it on the front. Okay. You can even press it into the glue that way too if you want. Now the thing with the silicone mat is you can just wipe that glue away. It wipes right off and can be used another time. So that's can be done on the back of the world if you don't have the adhesive sheet. So I just put the swirl on the inside just because I thought the card looked too plain on this side with the world there. Oh, getting marks on my card. Okay, so to put our world together, just peel off your adhesive backing. And if you don't have nails, you can use scissors. I'll show you on the next one. When you do peel that off, just check that you've got all the little bits poked out of all the holes, and pop it on the circle. So it fits just inside the circle. Press it in there. And I like to just use a block to hold it in place. Okay, so I've got one little bit there that didn't pop out. However, when you pull the adhesive off, sometimes it comes out with the adhesive. So if you're having trouble peeling the adhesive away, you just simply use the edge of your scissors, or you can use your pick tool and just use that to pull up your edge. Okay. And just peel it apart and then pop it onto your circle. And again, I just stick it under the block to make sure it's all pressed down properly. So this is where you need your string, because we're going to make our world spin. Okay, so pop your world over and get a piece of tear and tape. Where's my end? There we go. Just about the length of the world. When you put the tear and tape on, if you have a look at the globe, there's one straight bit, because those are the, I can't remember which is latitude and which is longitude, but that's one of the lines there, and so you can see there's a straight line. Hopefully you can see that. Adjusting my light. So there's a straight line there, and so you want to put the tape roughly on the back in line with that straight line. You only have to put it on the back of one of them. So figure out where your line is, roughly straight down. It doesn't have to be exact, but that just gives you an idea of where to stick your string. So then the string, just pop it down, sticks on there. You can turn it over and adjust it. So you want your string coming out the top of that line and the bottom of that line, because then that means you've got your globe centered. All right. And now we can just stick it down. You could use some more sticky tape if you want, or for the video to do it quickly, I just put a bit of glue on there, and I just make sure I put some over the thread. So when you put your next one on, you just got to be aware of the direction. So we know where the center is, but we got to make sure that's the top and that's the bottom. So that's the top and that's the bottom of the world. And if you haven't had a look at these, there's New Zealand right here over off the side. So they put New Zealand on a separate side, then they've got Australia, which I think is quite clever, because quite often Australia and New Zealand are rivals. So if you look at this side, here we've got Australia down there. I'm not focusing. So Australia's down here, and New Zealand should be over here. And there it is, over there. So stick that together. Again, use my block to hold it in place. While I'm letting that stick together briefly. I'll show you how to weave this piece. I'm not even sure what that piece is called. So with the faux suede trim, you need a piece slightly longer than that. I always just do it off the roll. It's easier. And so the trick for this is just to get a piece of regular sellotape. Put the sellotape on the end, near the end of your ribbon. Fold it over and fold it over again. And basically, you've created sort of a fake needle at the end. So coming in from one side, you can weave it. So if you want, you can just push it in and out and try to weave it that way. Not cooperating. So you can pop it in and out. But that only lasts a little while, because once you get the thread in there, it's difficult to pull it through. So what I suggest is once you get it started, so see, I've started it over and under, pull it so you've got slightly more than the length, because it will shrink down as it weaves through. And then I do the stabbing method. So pull it up and stab in one slot, pull it through, and stab back up the other one. Just make sure you don't tangle it coming through, so make sure it's going the right way. So I'm going through every other one. So again, I'll show you that. I'm going to stab it through there, and then I'm going to stab it back up through here. If you're wondering how I know all this, I've been stitching since I was a child. So something like this is not new to me. So in and back up. And you do that for the full length, and then you just take the sticky tape off and cut this end. So to save you watching me do that, I've got one I've done earlier. So there you go. So there you go. So I snipped the end off here, and now I'll show you, there's the tape there. Just take your snips, slip the snips under the tape on the end they're stuck. Snip, snip, snip. And you can just slide the tape off. Depends on the tape you're using. So use one that's not too sticky. Okay? So pull the tape off, and then snip off that excess there. Alright, and you don't have to have any adhesive to hold it in place. It'll stay in place. Now, one side is straight up the top, the other side is uneven little slits, and I like to slide it down toward the uneven slips, so just kind of press it down a bit, and that's the part I'm going to be having down when I do it. So while I have that done, I'll show you, just put some tape on the back. The easiest way to stick down ribbon is with tape. So put tear and tape. I'm just going to put it straight over the ribbon section on the back of it, and just straight over the back, and tear it off. And that's waiting to be put onto the card. Okay, so that's done, ready to go. So now back to the world. So our world is now stuck in place, and we've got our top in the right direction. So we need to stick that in the front. Again, tear and tape is the easiest because we're using some thread. So just take a piece of tear and tape, roughly find the center, and stick it straight up. And I do the same at the bottom. Roughly find where the center is and stick it straight down. And then I put a little extra just to make it so it won't fall out easily. I just put a little extra strip there. You don't want to go all the way to the top because you've torn this, so it depends on how far you made your tear. It might not go all the way to the top. So put your sticky tape there, and you can just use your scissors to slide it up. Take your backing off. And here we go. Take the backing off. Okay. And then, again, make sure you got your world going up the right way. You might want to have an upside down world, but put it up the right way. I made sure I had New Zealand on the front of it. And because the white card base is in there, you can see to try to center it. Once you center it, just pull your string nice and tight down the bottom. And the same at the top, nice and tight. And the reason I had that extra weird tape is so I can come around depending on how much string I have. So I can just come around and have the extra string taped down. Okay, so see there? So there's my world, and you can spin it, and then when you open the card it can spin back and forth. Okay, but you want it to be lined up because there's not much gap between the world and that circle. Once you have that done, then we can put the rest of the card together. So put the backing on, make sure you put the adhesive on the opposite side of where you've put your color. And again, you could use double-sided tape. I'm just doing liquid glue just to make it quick and easy. And make sure you go around that circle in the center. Bring it round, and it should fit perfectly around there because they were cut together. Now see, I've ripped more off one side than the other, so I'm just going to fix it by tearing a bit more. I've gone a bit overboard on one side and not so much the other side, but that's okay. That's the nice thing with handcrafts. You can do what you want and make it how you want it to look. There we go. That looks a bit better, I'd say. The other thing with the liquid glue, you have time to move it, so you can look on the inside and make sure that it's not overlapping that circle. So the liquid glue allows you some time to move it around. And give that pressure. I've got a nice big block that I put on the top of that just to hold that in place. Because of the unevenness of the embossed piece, it might not stay in place very easily. Okay, then you want to put the base of your world on before you put the bottom pieces there, because otherwise you won't know where to place them. Okay, there we go. So just center that as best you can around the circle. You just want to make sure it's just at the bottom. You might want to open it up to check. And again, because there's unevenness on that embossed piece, I just go in and give it extra pressure to make sure it gets into all those gaps. You could pop this up on dimensionals if you want it to give it some height. It's up to you. Then it's just a matter of putting the rest of the card together. So definitely popping that up with some dimensionals. Just a couple's fine. And the top corner. And there we go. So you can see if it was down too far, our world wouldn't spin. So I can pop that up in the corner there. Then we've got our adhesive on to the ribbon piece, so we can just simply pull that off. Where's my scissors? It always takes longer to do things on video. It's funny because even though it's pre-recorded, it's still a bit nerve-wracking doing things on a video and in person. So when I put that down, I want to have the uneven bits down the bottom, so I do have a right versus a wrong way of doing it. So pop that there. And then the other layers are all dependent on where the bottom of the world is, or the bottom of the globe is. So that strip, just a bit of glue to hold that in place. Could use some double-sided tape, but it's quite skinny. So that, I'm just going to pop that there, just over the top. And it almost goes the whole length because it's 4 inches. But you can offset it if you want. Then this piece, again, depending on how far, how much room you have there, either overlaps or doesn't. But what I decided to do on my other ones to give it some interest is I tore it at an angle. See, as you tear it towards you, you end up with the white part. If I tore it the other way, it would be uneven, but there wouldn't be any white. So see on the back, there's no white showing. So it depends on the way you tear it. And I stuck this down with just some adhesive. There we go. This one I made it go all the way to the edge of the card. Give that a bit of pressure. So it's only just slightly overlapping that last piece. So there's lots of interesting sheets of designer series paper in this set, so you can pick and choose what you'd like. And this last one, remember I did that arrow? There's a reason for that, so I don't have to try to think of how to stick it up. So just put 3 dimensionals on the back of this guy, 1 on each side and 1 in the middle. And pop that out. Now, trick for dimensionals, if you press in the center, the edge of the paper pops up. That's one of the nice things with Stampin' Up dimensionals. I just noticed a message on my phone. Hopefully you saw all that. So, check the back, see which way up we're going. And then just, you can offset it, you can center it, put it wherever you want. I would like to put it so you can see a little bit of all the different papers as well as the ribbon coming out. So I think that looks pretty good there. Okay. So there you go. Card done. So you make the world a better place and you've got the spinning world. If you want to, what we call set the card, twist it up a bit before you close it. Try not to offset that. Then you put it in the envelope like that. And when you give it to somebody, yep, yeah, I got it. So there we go. The world will spin. That's not spinning quite as well. There we go. Spinning there. Okay. There's a world spinning and adventure awaits. All right. So that's the card done. I hope you enjoyed that. That's from the Beautiful World set along with the dies. And those are some other samples of the same card. This was my first one. I tried doing it with a different, that was the copper, which doesn't quite go very well with the brass. And then I put one of the embellishments in the top corner. There are some little corner elements and what are they called? Antique corners and slides is another thing that comes with this set. So I tried that there, and then I antiqued this up a bit. Even did the swirl there, so this one's slightly different than the other cards. So I hope you enjoyed that. Have a look at my blog because I'll have more information and dimensions there about this card. If you've enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to buy any products, contact your Stampin' Up demonstrator. If you're in New Zealand and do not already have a demonstrator, please go to my website. It's michellekritchley.stampinup.net. You'll be able to purchase all of these items. They're straight from the new catalog that started on June 3rd. And if you have any questions, let me know. I also have links on my website to other videos and other information that I have available for you. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!